Final Stop Brasil, Chapter 44, Hotel Blue Acacias, Benissa, Los Alamos. Rita was not very happy when I packed my things, but I also was a little disappointed by her, because since she had reconciled with her ex-boyfriend shortly after I had moved in, she rarely had time for me. Nothing was as we once promised us, and the plans we made. Through her, I had met Warren. She had reassured me I could trust him. He would pay back the borrowed money. This actually was the reason why I had helped him. Secretly, I held Linda partly responsible for it. Our parting was therefore quite cool. Bianca was also mad at me and didn't even want any further phone contact. As I left Ado the company, I wanted to leave everything behind me, just to look forward with hope everything finally normalized. Jeff I missed terribly, but I repressed it. During the time in La Linea, some bad luck struck me, but I first felt the consequences much later. One of the weekly shoppings I completed with Michael, I tried to reach a product of an upper shelf. Stupid of me, because Michael was by then already a head taller than me. I could have simply asked him, instead of contorting myself in such unhappy way that a nerve in my spine, as I learned later by the physiotherapist, got stuck so it almost paralyzed me. First, the symptoms came insidious. If I walked or was long time on my legs, I felt an uncomfortable pulling. Then I couldn't feel part of my legs no more. The doctors I consulted found nothing, so I continued first to live with it, but as I was a while on my legs, my feet began to tingle. The tingling moved up into the thighs until I couldn't feel my legs no more, and fell. It was scary. Linda suspected thrombosis. My doctor prescribed pills for it. There were days when I was feeling well, but then it became worse again. I tried desperately to fight against it, against the symptoms as well as against my fear of ending up in a wheelchair. I also swam in the sea, believing it would do me good. But when I lost any feeling in my legs for the first time in the sea and had to fight my way back from the open sea with only my arms through the waves until I reached the flat beach, I never swam again out into the deep sea. Many times I dragged myself close to tears from one lamppost to another, fearing my legs would fail. It was over with walking, dancing, all over and done. I found solace only with my friends on the internet when I sat at the computer at the reception of the hotel, night after night, or in an internet cafe, sending emails to Cesar and Celia, the producer of Salsa Bomba, I had met personally shortly before my departure, when I picked up the CD of the group from her and now stayed in frequent contact with her. On every occasion I heard the music of Salsa Bomba and at times forgot my grief. Strangely enough, I reached Jeff increasingly rare. If I called in the restaurant and he was not on the phone himself, I heard every time he was not there. Was he denying himself? As the fair began in El Palo, I arranged to meet up with Kande. Asked Chris to accompany me, because I was too scared to go anywhere alone now. Chris, however, was again the old one, also appeared to have a new girlfriend, and therefore had absolutely no ambitions to be seen with me. "If you can't walk properly, then you have to stay at home," was his comment. But eventually he settled to walk with me, or rather ahead of me in a distance of about 10 meters. The walking was straining me very much. The tickle began, and thus my panic. But I gritted my teeth until we reached the place where the music played. The baile took place, and of course Kande already amused herself. "I'm not staying here. If you want, you can stay with Kande, but without me," Chris muttered in his bad mood. I apologized to Kande because my fear was too great not to make it home alone. However, it didn't make no difference, for how brutal and callous Chris could be, he showed me on the way back, as my legs actually failed. He left me behind and went home. Holding on to a lamppost to keep me from falling, I could feel the strange looks of people passing by on me, certainly believing I was drunk and therefore couldn't stand on my legs. A taxi driver, however, seemed to notice this was not the case, stopped in front of me, jumped out of the car and helped me. Finally, I found a German doctor in Marbella, who listened carefully to my description of the symptoms and explained this was in no case thrombosis, and immediately transferred me to a physiotherapist. He ultimately found out a nerve stuck behind one of my vertebrae. In various meetings, which cost me €100 each, and bending pretty much everything on my body, he saved me from the wheelchair. You have come almost too late. If you have waited any longer, I could not have helped you any more. I was endlessly happy to be walking and swimming carefree again. For joy, I spent my French friends, who were very happy for me, and also about that I was finally back home in the restaurant around for celebration. My work at the hotel was a lot of fun for me. In Andres, I had a dear and patient colleague who showed me all I needed to know. We too were a unique team. Andres, who was actually a sushi chef, served once a week just this to the guests in the garden, while I took over the reception. Every single day I enjoyed my work. It was the happiest time in El Palo at all. At home, I had once again full control. My relationship with Michael improved markedly. Long I forgave him the refusal to leave El Palo with me. How it was the best. Soon Alicia gave me my own shifts, and when our third employee was sick, I also took over her night shifts, prepared the breakfast buffet, washed, prepared coffee, filled the washing and drying machines, after the cleaning lady, with whom I usually took breakfast together, had finished the rooms and brought the dirty linen. I wrote bills, organized the reservations, answered questions by email, welcomed guests, and saw them off after I settled accounts with them. Alicia, however, appeared less and less, and if she was late, so the impression arose that her interest of the hotel waned. She left almost everything to me and Andres, all decisions and responsibility. Of course, it was the advantage that I lived next door, so even on my days off, it would be knocked at my door when English or German guests arrived, or the washing machine was broken. I didn't mind. I completely loved and lived in this job, and was glad to have Michael and Max by my side. If it was less busy, I took Max over with me. Among the guests, I always maintained a good connection, and at night shifts it was not rare male guests staying at the small bar next to the reception, inviting me for drinks, having a little chat, and flirt with me. Chris told me he was planning to set up his own business with a partner. The guy I work for, he makes a hell of a lot of money from the evisceration of the cars and the export of auto parts to Nigeria. I can do this also, he explained to me. I was skeptical, interjected. You need people in Nigeria who you can trust, people who sell your car parts. How are you going to control it over there, and how are you going to know whether they are not fiddling you, if you see any money at all? But I have my brothers there. In addition, you could fly to Nigeria to control. Me? My hair stood at end. Nigeria had never ever even been a destination to discuss about. Forget it. I have nothing to do with it, and I certainly will not travel to Nigeria. Chris would not let himself be discouraged. On the contrary, the business partnership with his buddy was celebrated in El Palo, in my favorite restaurant, where we had excellent spaghetti with white pepper sauce, salmon and lobster. Since Michael was still in his 3-month summer vacation, Chris involved him in the work, although I thought nothing of it because I'm against child labor. But for Michael, it was fun to disassemble old cars and trying to earn his first money. Chris was completely changed, balanced, partly loving. But I didn't trust the peace. I knew Chris too well. On the other hand, I was satisfied he finally did something legal. It actually seemed the prison was a salutary shock for him on the long term. As for me, I was more than satisfied with my paradise at the doorstep in form of beach and sea, and this work which made me happier than I had ever been in any other before. Every day I had enough time to go to the beach with or without Max. Unfortunately, there is no paradise forever. In October, dark clouds came along. First off, Alicia was having a dispute with Andres. The atmosphere was getting heavy. Andres slipped me he would look for another job and recommended me to do the same. To my surprised question why I should do that, he posed the question with another. Are you blind? Haven't you noticed that Alicia doesn't have any more interest in the hotel? She enjoys her freedom, and according to this are the finances. She won't make it to come over the winter months. I could hardly believe it. My beautiful ideal world about me broke down again. I confronted Alicia, who confirmed the sad truth. Yes, I think it's better you also go and look for another job. For myself, I will accept a job as a waitress in Cadiz and close the hotel. Our cleaning lady had long been so clever and set off on time when her boyfriend opened the bar. Alicia now did the cleaning listless herself, and just as listless, I did my work at the reception. We were only 3 of us, but the season was over anyway, and therefore hardly any guests arrived. So I had plenty enough time to send applications to other hotels. Everything went off again. I was nervous and irritable every day. My plan to have finally a secure job and definitely go for the separation from Chris shattered again like everything. Chris understood my irritation completely wrong. You don't need to worry. I will earn with the export of auto parts so much money I can provide for you and Michael. Of all applications, I received only one invitation for an interview, and this invitation came from a hotel which was so far up in the mountains I couldn't even reach there due to my height fear. The steep serpentines were so narrow, 2 cars not had passed each other, and at the side view onto the deep abyss, I felt my sweat of fear on my forehead. So I took the first opportunity, offered to turn around and go down again. Inevitably, I worked now together with Chris on his project, negotiated with freight forwarders and found container distributors, negotiated for favorable freight shipments, and dispatched the container handling. Things Chris had not the slightest idea of. Finally, only the question remained, who would take over the distribution and, above all, the control in Nigeria? Again, Chris asked me to do this. Forget it, I will not fly to Nigeria. I categorically refused. What was his family there for? Should they do it? I certainly wouldn't. Meanwhile, Chris was trying again to get closer with me, but this was overlongest for me. I made no secret of the fact I still loved Jeff, additionally warning him I would claim compensation of him for my computer and all the expensive software I had invested, if he should actually make money with those exports. Michael and I helped when the vans were loaded on the truck, filled with the car parts. At this time, Alicia had already closed the hotel. It hurt me in the soul, and I could hardly stand it, to step out the front door to look at the closed hotel where I spent the happiest time of my professional life. Once again awoke the desire in me to leave everything behind. Before Christmas, I booked on short notice a flight to Sao Paulo. First off, the joy of reunion was great. Jeff was lovingly, as he used to be. After the first 2 days, however, he claimed he absolutely had to go home and left me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning alone in the hotel. I took him to task. He avoided me. I went my own way instead of waiting for him at the hotel. I met with Celia and her brother, the head of the group Salsa Bomba. Our friendship became even more intense, and I was totally carried away when I heard the band play live. This, however, Jeff didn't like at all, and we got into a dispute. Tears were running, then we were reconciled again. On the penultimate evening, Jeff, loving as he used to be, kissed me passionately and swore how much he loved me, but by 2 o'clock he got dressed to leave me alone. Again, there was controversy. "Tonight I'm going home with you," I announced. This, however, he refused categorically. Since he lived in Sao Paulo, I had accompanied him not one time to his home. He reasoned this, he lived just too far away. I was pissed off. The next day I walked into the restaurant earlier than usual, but Jeff avoided me however he could. My disappointment was so great, I felt a choking in the stomach. I couldn't eat anything, ordered instead one caipirinha after another, without thinking of any consequences. As Jeff's colleagues were going to write the drinks on Jeff's bill, I refused. "No, I can pay myself." Finally, I was plentiful and lost my balance already when I got up to leave the restaurant. After I settled my bill, Jeff held my arm and asked, "Why are you doing this? Don't go. Wait. We have to talk." Toward the bar, he called, "Give her a big, strong coffee." With the talking it was not so easy because he was very busy, but what he told me in between definitely pulled the ground from under my feet. "Rita, how often have I asked you to stay with me? You didn't want to. I also need to think of me and my future. You already have children. I want to have kids too. You were not ready for anything. I'm sorry. I'm going to marry. For several months I have a girlfriend who thinks like me." What he said was like a slap in the face. The first time since Collins I had really loved a man. It was all spinning around me, and I had to sit down again. How could Jeff do this to me? He had to do his work. With my eyes I followed every move of him. My God, how much I loved this man. I forced myself to get up and staggered to the exit, as Jeff once again took me by the arm and restrained. "Don't go like this. Wait." He took me to a table and pushed me into the chair. I waited for hours, but Jeff was nowhere to be seen anymore. Finally, I asked one of his colleagues to look for him. He returned briefly to tell me Jeff had long gone home. This was too much for me. I couldn't hold back my tears, so I crashed out of the restaurant onto the road. The effect of the strong cachaças was only now really noticeable. Drunk and aimlessly, late at night, I stumbled through the dark streets of Sao Paulo, without knowing where and how I should go back to the hotel. Finally, I landed in a dark, red-light district, where prostitutes were standing at the roadside. There I sat in a dingy cafe on a corner, and ordered a strong coffee to be at least clear to find back to the hotel. But even here I could not suppress my sobs. My sadness turned into anger. However, limitless rage, hatred towards Chris, whom I called the same night after my return to the hotel, and everything, damn, in me unloaded. "I hate you, characterless pig. Because of you, Jeff left me. You influenced Michael, turned him against me, and persuaded him not to come with me. You have destroyed my life. For this, I'll take you back to jail. I just need to give evidence against you, and I'll do that. All I know." Quite. Chris listened to all I spoke, just asked me if I was drunk. "We talk about it when you're back." I felt not the slightest desire at all to talk to Chris ever again. My return was accordingly cool. I was hurt so deeply, I swore to myself I would never again involve myself with anyone. Christmas no longer interested me, and I prepared nothing. Just for Michael, I roused myself to watch him with the Christmas parade in Malaga. As we were walking side by side, I looked up at him and thought to myself, I love you, and only for you I will carry on. I could have never imagined this was the last Christmas we had together. On Christmas Eve, Chris invited us for dinner, but only on Michael's urging I joined them. I would have much rather stayed in bed. The Christmas day Michael spent with Miguel, Cande and their family. I drove alone to the movies to distract me. The following days I took Max for long walks in the beautiful parks of Malaga. I only now had discovered. Convulsively, I thought about it how I could finally get rid of Chris. This hate relationship, which long had not been a relationship anymore. My birthday was, as always, very lonely and sad. Depressed, I was thinking about my life. What had gone wrong? As long as I could think back, I was always surrounded by friends. My life was always full of action, and a tense life around me. But on days like my birthday, when I finally needed someone who would be there for me, nobody was there. Again and again, I had led myself into relationships with the wrong men. According to these disputes, broke out again. How are we going to live off €500? If it alone goes for the rent, I hissed at Chris. He had now become even more alien to me, and was just repulsive to me since he had his long hair cut. Suddenly, there was nothing more appealing to this man. But this was not all. He changed his habits, and even showed worse manners. When he came home from work, he took off his smelly socks and threw them somewhere in a corner. And before he took a shower to get rid of his plumber stench of shit, he had dinner first. At dinner, he forgot to close his mouth. I could only turn away in disgust. Desperately, I expanded my search for work all over Spain. In the end, it didn't matter at all where in Spain I would work. The main important thing was to get away from Chris. The place here had become my home, but of what use if I couldn't find work and had no money to live? I grimly sat again in John's locutorio and sent applications in all directions of Spain. Towards Michael, I was now vigorously and allowed no more contradictions. No matter where I find work, we will move there, and that means us together. Michael knew I was very serious. Meanwhile, it had risen for him. Chris and I were not a couple for a long time anymore, and how much I was suffering under the present condition. He probably felt a little guilty, because it had also not escaped him it was over with Jeff, and why. Jones and I freshened up our old friendship again. He promised to help and listen around for a job. After a long time, I had a look on the internet site We Germans in Spain, and there I found a job application of a Doris, a woman the same age as I, a son the same age as Michael. She was looking for work, as I, and about to separate from her partner, as I did. Strange. It was as if I read my own ad. Spontaneously, I got in contact with her. First, we only corresponded by email, but soon we realized we possessed a lot more in common. But the beginning of this friendship was initially put on hold when I received a reply from a construction company in Benissa. I had no clue where Benissa was. They had great interest in me. The owner of the company was German. My experience I had described in my applications he thought very useful for his company, so we agreed on a 4-week trial period, spontaneously, without prior interview, because of the large distance. During this time he offered I could live in his house. He explained Benissa was very close to Alicante, so I would have to head towards Barcelona on the coastal highway. I took Michael to the site, explained I had to work wherever, and now found this place in Benissa. 4 weeks I would stay there for the trial period. During this time, I would search for an apartment. Michael did not protest anymore when I announced I would soon come back for him and Max. To Chris, I just said so much. It was definitely over. I would go to Benissa and only return one last time to take Michael and Max and fetch my things. It didn't touch him at all. He even possessed the nerve to say, "Well, then you can send me money every month so I may come over the rounds." I felt like crying when I packed my bags into the car. 4 long weeks I would be without Michael and Max, but without the thought of parting forever from El Palo, what had become my second home. 7 hours of driving through the night until I reached Benissa. I passed Alicante, saw the sea, and the city bathed in lights. Benissa, on the other hand, was a dark nest I didn't like from the start. By comparison, the poor port and border town of La Linea was a paradise. Also, I could feel immediately it was much colder here than in the south or Spain. When I arrived early in the morning, I tried to reach my future boss, unfortunately without success. So I initially looked for a hotel, which was not easy task, because in all of Benissa there was only one hotel, but with a very good restaurant, where I ate and a little later occupied the very last room still available. Before I fell asleep was my last thought, my goodness, I've spent half my life in hotel rooms. The whole day I couldn't reach my boss. I walked through downtown Benissa, which was not a very long walk. The center of Benissa consisted of 3 small streets. In the evening, I finally reached the man, but now he was unfortunately already at home. He asked if I could stay one more night in the hotel, and in the morning we would then meet in front of the company. Right on time I found myself there, but instead of my boss appeared his life companion, who introduced herself, unlocked the door, and vaguely showed me around. My predecessor had not only stolen, but also left quite a mess. Well, yes, my specialty was to remove the chaos of other people and put things back in order. My job was initially to prepare the already overdue quarterly balance sheets and the yearly financial statements. In addition, of course, were tasks such as writing invoices, to check and pay incoming invoices, and control timesheets to prepare wages, etc., etc. All as it used to be. It was terribly cold in the office, but the woman didn't know how to turn on the gas heater. So I started shivering and shaking with my work until my boss arrived and was delighted to see I was already in the process of sorting out the documents. For the first day, this is enough. We are going to show you your accommodation first. Just follow my car. Half an hour's drive, I tried to keep up with my boss's jeep in driving down the steep serpentines. Since it was already dark, I couldn't see too much of the area, only imagined my boss lived fairly isolated. When we arrived, however, this country house was a very different world. A 3-story house, surrounded by terraces and beautiful gardens, which dipped into bright spotlight when someone was coming through the large gate. A black dog ran excited up to me, strongly resemblance to Max, and outside the back door, separating a fantastically beautiful kitchen and a huge living room, gathered some cats. However, neither cats nor dogs were allowed inside the house. My boss showed me my room in the basement, while Marion, his life companion, prepared dinner for us. The room was large and cozy, with a warm quilt on the bed. There was a television with satellite receiver, so I was even able to receive German TV program. The house is lovely and warm, and in the living room a burning fireplace. This did me some good, because it was bitterly cold outside, as cold as in Germany. I hated this cold. After dinner, I withdrew myself to call Michael, took a hot shower, afterwards crawled under the warm blanket and watched TV. Outside the terrace door, and also my front door, so I would not always have to walk through the house, sat the black dog. At first I was tempted to let him in, but I didn't want to risk problems. Instead, went out to him because I wanted to smoke anyway. However, I couldn't stand it long. It was just too cold. During the following days, I did the job almost automatically. Quickly, my boss realized he could leave me and go with ease with his men on mounting. The company, basically a construction company, but specialized in installation, maintenance, and repair of swimming pools, was an industry that didn't inspire me at all. As my boss pressed the store additionally onto me, where he sold all possible spare parts for swimming pools, I was pretty fed up. What should I tell the customers? I had absolutely no idea of the matter. Correspondingly went the sales conversations, namely not at all. Unless the regular customers came but knew exactly what they wanted and especially where they found it, because I didn't. During the lunch breaks and after work, I went to find accommodation, but didn't really do it with my strong ambition I usually did things. I also asked myself how I should maintain, with a salary of €1,000, Michael, Max, and the car and me. Here in this ugly city where the dogs were buried, was not a single house to find under €500. The school of Benissa I didn't like at all. The sea was about 1 hour drive away, practically not to be achieved without a car. Buses were passing very rarely. With all of this, I told myself Michael would never agree with. In fact, it was me who liked absolutely nothing here. This confirmed the telephone conversation with Michael, me describing Benissa in the blackest colors. But this time, Michael quite consistently replied, "Mom, that's completely no matter how far away the sea is. Main thing, you got work. And with the school, I will manage. Don't worry about it." If only Michael would have thought like this when I wanted to take him to Brazil or later to La Linea. The memory of Jeff still hurt, and I suffered terribly from homesickness to Malaga, El Palo. And it was getting much worse when it began to snow. How much I hated these winters. Marianne wasn't exactly encouraging me when she showed me the knife she always carried in her bag for protection, because it was very dangerous here, she warned me. Since they had attacked her in a parking garage, she would not leave the house without a knife. With each passing day, my desire to stay here faded a little more, and my longing for Michael, Max, and Malaga grew larger. My boss, however, was determined to help me find accommodation, and listened around amongst all his connections. At dinner, he proposed to lend me his jeep, so I could pick up Michael, Max, and my things when I finally found a place for us. He wanted me to stay, but almost angry, I thought to myself, then pay more money, you ass, so I can lead at least some life worth living. The last weekend, before the end of the probationary period I had spent alone in Benissa, I decided to return to El Palo. On Monday, I closed off the balance sheet and told my boss I would return back to Malaga the coming Friday, as the 4 weeks probation time were over, and I couldn't, with the best intentions, imagine to live here. I explained my decision. My boss was not happy about it because he had long since learned to appreciate my skills. Additionally, I was multilingual, whatever came in good stead. He would not find a substitute for me all that easy. After I completed this Friday the pay slips and paid the wages to the employees, I said goodbye, sat in the car where my already packed suitcases were waiting for me, and accelerated towards Malaga. Nothing could hold me longer here in this desolate place. Even Sao Paulo was more beautiful and better than this. After 7 hours' drive through the night, I arrived at Malaga in the early morning hours. The knot dispatched in me when I saw the beautiful illuminated fountains and lighted palm trees. The heater in the car I needed no longer and had turned it off long since. But when I entered the house in El Palo, awaited me not a good surprise. Max, as always, was overturned with joy, but he was the only one. All the photos I had put in frames on our shelf wall unit, and all the things I bought for decoration, as little nice candles, etc., were removed, and in its place were now numerous bottles of expensive whiskey. The house was filthy. First off, I prepared me a coffee, and wondered how it should now go further. These expensive bottles of whiskey were perhaps a sign for money had come from Nigeria, or did Chris do a different job? Nothing like it. How I found out shortly afterwards, when Chris got up to go to work. Meanwhile, he spared even the morning shower. He was anything but thrilled to see me. We had nothing to say to each other anymore. Michael's joy was also limited, but solely because he now understood the gravity of the situation. There had to be work for me somewhere here. Daily I was searching, and at least was successful to be invited for interviews, which, however, aroused every time false hopes. "We'll call you," or "I think it will go smoothly. I will get back to you." For a timeshare company, I translated the Spanish text into German and English without any problems. The boss was impressed and saw no reason not to hire me. A few days later, I received an email with a statement he had to choose between me and another contestant. They had opted for the other lady. In a holiday and recreation center was a contact person for the German senior citizens wanted. I had a long and promising conversation. They wanted to get back to me. When they didn't, I called. But when I presented myself with my name, the phone was put down without commentary. This happened to me not only once. It was so rude how people were treated desperately seeking for work. With Chris, I crashed every day, and the situation was almost unbearable. He made no secret of the fact he wanted to get rid of us. Where he had the money for the expensive whiskey, among other luxurious things, soon became quite clear to me. He was again actively involved in the drugs trade. Then I found a hopeful ad in the paper. A help for a pharmacy was wanted who spoke German, Spanish and English. Immediately I called and sat a few minutes later in my car to go there. The owner of the pharmacy liked me right away, and we quickly agreed. I cheered. I had finally made it. To celebrate the day, I stopped at a bar and allowed myself a tinto de verano. 2 days later, the pharmacist called me. The employee I should have replaced had changed her mind and would stay after all. Therefore, he didn't need me no longer. My limit was reached. I could not take any more. One declination after another. The eternal fight with Chris. These somber figures recently walking in and out of the house. The hope to have at last found work destroyed from one day to another. I cried my eyes out and was about to give up. It didn't make no sense anymore. As bad as it was, I saw no other option than returning back to this hated Germany. All illusions, dreams, plans, everything exploded. And Michael? Had I not fought for him, for his future, where he didn't have to suffer from the racisms of the Germans? Desperately, I explained Michael our situation, took him to the Spanish foreign police to apply for his residence. At least, Michael should have the opportunity to return back here at any time and enjoy the same rights as Spaniards. But when I submitted the completed application form with passport photographs and the necessary documents, a fresh disappointment awaited me. It would take about 1 year waiting before his residence was submitted, as there were at those times massive amounts of requests. In this situation, I met back with Doris on the internet. She was working in a job on a commission basis and now tried to encourage me. She was the only friend I had. Kande was also there for me and tried to help, but we had never been all that close, alone because of all the lies I had to invent because of Chris. Alicia was long in Cadiz and never showed up again. Andres was working on mounting somewhere within the country. The French were still there, but this friendship was always more superficially. I wrote long emails with Doris. Later we changed it into long telephone calls. Meanwhile, Chris behaved more disgusting. He wanted me out of the house at any cost, and looked for every opportunity to fight. I was desperate, and in this situation I didn't care when Chris overheard my pleading at Jones to help me. But Jones, also very much worried about me, kept covered and explained to me on one of our phone calls he wanted no trouble with Chris if he would help me. Was Jones afraid of Chris? With horror, I thought of the return to Germany, but there I would at least get unemployed benefits or assistance. Here in Spain, I had no right, even though I paid into the treasury. Doris kept encouraging me not to give up so easy. You will find work, I'm sure of it. Look, even I've found a job, and I don't even speak Spanish. You speak Spanish and English. It will help you. When Chris was becoming very clear and asked me when I finally would move out, it came to the big bang. In the presence of his friend, a sinister figure, I shouted at him, "You were the one who ruined everything for me. Do you think I don't know that you lied to me? You received money from Nigeria. You are doing well now, and that's why you want to get rid of me now. Just wait, your trial is still pending. I'll bring you back where you belong with my testimony, you criminal." A threat I had repeated more than once, and finally was my death sentence. Just one day later, I saw an ad in the newspaper of a Spanish magazine wanting German and English-speaking staff for the advertisement space. With trembling hands, I called there. The boss asked me if I could just come around. In the car towards Malaga, I sent prayers to heaven it would work this time. And it worked. José, the head of the editorial, was more impressed than anything by my appearance, and I played my feminine charms to the full. With the result, he kept me there immediately, and I was trained by Juan, the only permanent staff, on the same day. There was a lot I had to learn new, but it didn't bother me to learn all the prices of ads, to learn about divulgation for free advertising pages of the magazine, always with the aim of selling a complete page for 3,000 euro. The editorial also accepted ads of other Spanish newspapers, and the German or English weekly edition of the Sur. This was initially my main task. I participated in the editorial meetings and found it very interesting to learn how a page layout was created. A new exciting world for me. However, there was also a lot of correspondence to do. But here were my weaknesses, showing about the Spanish grammar. I lacked purely and simply the basics. My luck was José liked me, patiently sat next to me and corrected with me the text. In this way I advanced much of Spanish. As patient as with me, he certainly wasn't with Juan. On the contrary, he was partly a pure choleric. But I was certainly blessed, and Doris cheered with me. I knew it, and the rest of it you will also manage now. I have made it to separate from my partner, and now have my own apartment with my son. And that's what I took care of next. With a 1,200 euro salary, I agreed with José. I could easily afford an apartment for 300 euro or a bit above. I concentrated my search in Torremolinos, the place I always liked very much. Moreover, it was far enough away from Chris, but near enough to my job in Malaga, Malagueta. With the limit I initially set, it was not easy. First off, I got offered best true hovels in the worst places to live. This I wanted neither for Michael nor for me. Then I followed an offer in Los Alamos, a nice district of Torremolinos, located a bit outside of the center. It was love at first sight when I saw this cute little apartment in this chic apartment block. Everything was newly renovated and tastefully decorated interior, from the sofa up to the dainty little wooden corner seat at the dining table. The floor was tiled white, the bedroom floor designed with wooden patterns. The bathroom was nice and everything new, including the fittings. In the kitchen, which was very small, separated from the living dining area by a half-open wall with a round arc, was a refrigerator and a washing machine at disposal. There was no stove, but an electric cooker with 2 rings. When the owner finally showed me the community pool in the garden, I agreed without hesitation, even though the rent was €500. Somehow we would manage it. Even when going outside, I was totally impressed by the beautifully carved wooden doors in the Spanish style. In the entrance hall to the house, a vast terrace with large plants, very pretty in the dark illuminated by colored lights. This apartment was for me simply a dream. In the neighborhood was a hospital, a grocery store, 2 coffee bars, and several restaurants. After some inquiries, I learned we lived only 10 minutes' walk from the beach. A school was nearby. What more could I ask? Only a few days short until the 1st of April, the day we would finally escape the hell with Chris. I couldn't keep it hidden before Chris we would move because I had to pack my boxes. But the television remains here, I had to listen to. Apparently he had forgotten that I had bought this giant TV for the bar. On the moving day I waited until Chris went to work. Immediately called the man with the van I previously hired to come to the house so I could leave with Max and Michael as soon as possible. Michael didn't protest, but I knew he was sad for having to part with his best friend Miguel. Therefore, I resolved to talk to Chris once we would have large enough distance from each other to ask him for letting Michael stay at his place now and then, so Michael could continue keeping in touch with his friends. Chris loved Michael. I had to give him this for advantage, and saw no problem. Michael liked it very much in our new apartment. He soon found a soccer field nearby towards the beach. About the fact that Michael felt well right from the start, about our cute little apartment near the beach, about my job and the final line under the chapter with Chris, I was overjoyed and shared my joy with Doris, Celia, and Cesar, who rejoiced with me. Celia in Sao Paulo and Cesar in Chile. With joy I now touched my financial reserves to buy the things we needed or just to make the house even more beautiful. Microwave, dishes, fancy hand and bath towels, picture frames, candles, and some other decorative things. When unpacking, I realized our wardrobe, very pretty, with the sliding doors and a large mirror, but unfortunately a little too small for all our clothes. So I bought additionally, each for Michael and me, a pine chest of drawers, fitting with the other furniture, where we could accommodate all the remaining things. Our apartment was complete, and it was the purest joy to be sitting at our dining table, taking coffee, and to look around. Due to the large GRP window ranging from one front to another, the living room and dining room, as well as the bedroom, were very bright and friendly. Michael and I shared the big bed in the bedroom. For Michael it was certainly already in April too hot, because the sun appeared during the day with its full force at our window. So I bought additionally 2 more fans in the living room, even though we possessed a large ceiling fan. The first free Saturday, Michael, Max, and I set off to test out the footpath to the school. If it wasn't too far, Michael would have to walk, because there was no question we now had to live more economically if I didn't want to use up all my reserves. It was a glorious sunny day, and we walked cheerfully towards the beach, then along the beach promenade, where was much to see. This end of Torremolinos, I didn't know by then, and was completely thrilled. I invited Michael to a restaurant where we had currywurst and chips. This and other German food we indeed missed sometimes. And for afters, ice cream from the ice cream parlor right next door. Here was truly everything. Above all, a wonderful view of the sea. We passed a supermarket, Mercadona, which would become my favorite shopping destination because of some cheap offers and products, such as in Germany. Here I even found whole wheat bread, Nutella for Michael, among many more, which was not given everywhere in Spain. In our euphoria, we walked too far, missing the road leading to the school. The result was we were walking until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, in about 35 degrees heat. Max gasped for air. Michael had turned red and mumbled, "Never again." And despite our efforts, Michael was not even accepted in the school. There was no other choice than registering Michael in a school in the center of Torremolinos, which meant he had to take a public bus, since there was no school bus existing. I tried, however, the active advertising sales because this brought the real money. €3,000 for a full page in color. My boss paid me for sold pages, 50% commission. Money I really needed, because after a few days my TV gave up, for which I had bought a nice TV stand, and now had to buy a new TV to put on top. This I completed in a large electrical store, where I bought at the same time a little stereo for us. All I bought was from now on for Michael and me. This I made clear to him, time and time again. These are your things also. We are one team. I was more frequently in Malaga, on the road, visiting customers, what I liked much better than sitting in the office, while Michael, to my delight, very quickly found new friends, both in the neighborhood and in school. He spent his time with them on the soccer field or at the beach. I finally got to know Doris, and thus deepened our friendship. I visited her, she visited me, and we planned to go jointly to the traditional dance into the May. I heard about a nice Spanish disco, the Atravete, in Torremolinos. I didn't exactly know where it was, but planned anyhow to go there. The evening began with a dinner in a German restaurant. After dinner we made our way towards the center when my phone rang. An all too familiar voice in German said, "Hello, how are you? What are you doing tonight? Can we meet?" "For weeks I hear nothing from you, and now you are in a hurry to see me?" I laughed. Jones and I joked and flirted on the phone, and even though I explained to him I was not alone and was planning to go dancing with my girlfriend, he persuaded me to pass by shortly in his locutorio. Doris had no objection. After some time, and again a few pounds lighter, I walked into his shop, and suddenly, for a moment, was this old magic between us again. "Rita, you are more beautiful than ever." He greeted me with a hug. Of course he knew I was now living separate from Chris. I introduced him to Doris, but he had little interest. Instead, grumbled to me, "Send her home. I want to be alone with you." "I don't even think about it. Today I go out with Doris. For you, there will be another time." I beamed at him. With this, Jones was not satisfied. "After I close my shop, I'll follow you." We found the disco, and I spontaneously decided this would be my favorite location. Here my favorite music was played: reggaeton, Spanish ballads, and modern Spanish dance music, as of David Bisbal, Andy and Lucas, and Alejandro Sanz, etc. The audience was not too young, and a little higher level as in the normal discos, just my class. The atmosphere was very good. It didn't take long until I was asked to dance, as before with Rosie. I was asked, but Doris not. I danced with her, so she had her fun too. We both burst out in laughter when for some time English music was played, but not just any. No, it was the old stuff by Modern Talking. Oh no, you go in the deepest south of Spain, in a Spanish club, and you're still haunted by Dieter Bohlen, I joked. My view, however, followed all those handsome Spaniards, for whom I first time ever had eyes. I must have been crazy to be living such long with a Nigerian in Spain, and then fell madly in love with a Brazilian, while here are so many beautiful men, I said, half in jest, whereupon Doris answered, "Rumor has it, where and when love hits you, there is no influence on it. But your Jeff really looks smashing. For someone like him, I would have also traveled to Brazil." Long since, Doris had admired the photos of Jeff at my home, which I had set up like a sanctuary in pretty picture frames. With a glance at my phone, I noticed it had been ringing several times without me hearing it. Oh yes, there was still also Jones, and he was waiting outside. I went out to him sitting in his car when he suggested change into another club. Doris agreed, since she obviously was a little bored in this one anyway. We followed Jones in my car as he piloted us into a secluded alley in Benalmádena, stopped on a parking lot in front of a dimly lit club. "To me it looks a bit scary here," I remarked. Jones suggested I come with him alone first, to see if it suited me and Doris. I already guessed what lay ahead of me. Jones rang a doorbell, whereupon a little window opened in the door. A pair of eyes looked at us first, before the door opened. We descended a pretty dim-lit stairway to a bar, which seemed quite cozy. Jones was apparently known here, ordered drinks for us. We toasted, and then he led me through a dark corridor with many rooms branching off, all with sparse lights. In all these areas, so I quickly noticed, despite the darkness, was the same. People shagging like hell, or as if they were in a competition, although it initially appeared to me as if a group of people was somehow tangled together. Everybody was banging with everyone. We were in a swinger club, banging with different partners. Unbelieving, I looked up at Jones. "I have to wonder much about you. Does this kind of thing turn you on?" I asked, half amused, half horrified. "Doesn't it turn you on?" Jones asked back. I just rolled my eyes and replied, "I'm going to get Doris, provided she wants to enter this place, which I doubt." She wanted. We entered the shed together. Jones took us to a room with separés where we had reserved seats at the table. Apparently, here were the first contacts made, or the people just had a break with a drink. I concluded, because some were sitting only in bathrobes at the tables. The rest was dressed decently, at least. Jones was consuming quite a lot of whiskey, I noticed. He also showed Doris the environment, while I was quite bored. I looked around, saw the TVs installed in each booth. But if I expected an entertaining television program, I was mistaken. The program consisted of endless porn movies. This turned me more off than on, just as much as the rest of the atmosphere. Bored, I looked again in the round. The result was that Jones had little notes slipped into his hands, written, "People were interested in me." "Don't you just want to join?" Jones asked, amused. "Are you nuts?" I hissed at him angrily. To appease me, he took me to a dance floor. While dancing in his arms, there was again the old intimacy between us, but the feelings weren't right anymore. We both had changed too much. Jones asked if I wanted to have another look around. "No, thanks, I've already seen enough." Jones led me back to our table and asked for the sake of politeness Doris to dance. I was bored again, extravagantly. There were not even beautiful men to look at. Strictly speaking, the present ones were just as ugly as the women. "Now they are already dancing naked on the dance floor," Doris complained indignantly, but half amused. Jones downed another whiskey. ordered another round, and zoomed off, animated, to watch the doings in this place. Doris and I looked at each other for one moment. I knew exactly we thought the same thing. "Should we now?" I asked. Doris nodded. Hastily, we roared past the bar, up the stairs, and shook us laughing outside the door. "Just don't tell anyone where you've spent dance into May." I still cackled as we searched at 5 o'clock in the morning in Torremolinos, an open bar, where we could sip a café con leche. Since we didn't find one, we sipped the coffee in my apartment, still laughing tears about the experience when Jones called. "You simply left me behind and lurched," he complained to us next. "Can I come to you?" "No way, Michael is here," I lied. "Then come to me." Horny Jones begged no. "Today I'm not going anywhere anymore," I answered firmly, and added we were practically asleep already. This was it for me. The chapter Jones closed for all time. My boss gave me and Juan a very interesting task. In Malaga opened a food and beverage fair. There we should inquire new customers. The huge exhibition halls offered too much to see. In particular, I was interested in the stalls with local products. At all the stalls issued samples like bread and cheese, pastries, juices. Juan had preferred his focus on wine tasting. It was an interesting and fun day for us, and at the end I was tired, my feet aching, but I had numerous addresses and business cards to bring a satisfied boss back in the office. At home, however, I prepared my very own stress by setting the idea into my head I necessarily needed to watch my German television programs. So I looked for a supplier of satellite systems and thought I had found him, too. He came, installed the satellite dish, and already did I have German programs by the receiver. But what kind of programs? The first channel offered Bible programs. The second offered German porno movies, and so it continued. For days I telephoned after the man who promised to process the properly programs. Since I couldn't take a day off for something like this, I instructed Michael with a task to take care we would accept the typical programs such as Pro7, Sat1, ARD, ZDF, RTL, and RTL Plus, together with other like MTV, etc. Throughout the day I was looking forward to a German television evening. Besides the food, this was really the only thing I loved about Germany. The intellectual television program, where one at least had the choice of something else than novellas. But in the evening came the big disappointment, because additionally to Bible and pornography, I received now Austrian programs, but no Germans. I certainly not wish to watch after a busy day Austrian Lederhosen. Michael's command: "How am I supposed to know which programs you want?" Typical. In any case, these certainly not. I ordered the man for the third time, when he found out, which he certainly previously knew already, my inexpensively receiver could not process the German programs, but therefore all the English ones. Oh no, Coronation Street I didn't want at all. Together we rode to the dealer of the receiver sales in Benalmádena. He was sure it was not a problem at all. He would simply download the programs I used. Saturday in a week I could pick up the receiver, then everything was ready. Well, I would still put up for one more week with the DVDs of David Bisbal in the evening. A great man and singer whose career I followed from the start as he took first place in a Spanish talent competition. Since then he was also a swarm and idol of all Spanish female teenagers. Not necessarily my age group. Of course, the boys, including Michael, liked his music also, but it was kept secret for not running risk to be called gay. At the checkout of the supermarket, I put the latest DVD by David Bisbal on the rope belt. The cashier grinned meaningful at Michael, who stood next to me and understood the message. Embarrassed, he protested, "This is not mine," while pushing the DVD cover pointedly in my direction. as the cashier grinned even wider. But I would not let the embarrassment sitting on me and took advantage of the fact that Michael had immediately left the shop. Of course it is his. You just don't want to admit it. Saturday, I learned my receiver was absolutely not adaptable for German programs. So I paid another €100 to exchange it for a compatible receiver, and finally enjoyed my German programs. But only for 3 days. Monday evening, in the midst of an exciting movie, was a storm. It flashed, thundered, rained, and stormed. The parabolic dish had been violently torn from the attachment. On the television screen I had now snowstorm in Alaska. So it was once again David Bisbal until the young man again became available. Much better than watching television were the walks I took with Max at the beach promenade of Torremolinos. Every night I walked with him 2 hours along the beautifully lit beach, the restaurants and bars. It was never boring for me to enjoy the view of the sea and to be grateful to live in this paradise. Max had become much calmer, walked as a good dog without a leash next to me. For him it was just as glorious to run around on the beach or just snoop around at the beach promenade. Sometimes, however, it gave me a pang when I saw the loving couples passing me hand in hand. I still thought a lot about Jeff and wasn't open for no other relationship. And actually, did happen I no longer dared to hope for. He did call me to ask me for forgiveness. He had now realized the big mistake and how he hurt me. His relationship had fallen apart. Almost pleadingly, he asked me to come to Sao Paulo as soon as possible. Yet, for all the joy to hear his voice again, after all, I hesitated with the answer. As much as I still loved Jeff, as much did it still hurt what he did to me, how he had left me. Right now, I can't get away, Jeff. I am glad to have finally found a job. Puti esperar, mi amor, he replied. I wondered, however, did he end the relationship or the woman? Was it therefore it occurred to him I was still existing? The longer I thought about it, the more doubt I had. Where should it all lead to, anyway? I lived in a paradise. Was I really ready to exchange it for Sao Paulo? The answer was clear, no. So I called him back in Sao Paulo and asked him, why don't you come to Spain? Here you can find work and would also earn more money than you do there. It would be the best solution for all of us. This, however, was not at all a point of discussion for Jeff. Not even when I gave him the ultimatum. If you really love me, then come to Spain. The ticket I would pay for you. Ti amo, mas no posso fazer isso não, was his last word about it. This the contact broke up again. But my old wounds were torn open once more. A waitress of a Brazilian rodízio, opposite of the magazine editorial, advised me, after we got to know each other a little better, and I told her the grief with my Brazilian boyfriend. Give him time. Brazilians are hotheads. He will come. I felt bad about the situation. I wavered between hope and determination to bury this love definitely. My emotional situation deteriorated, and I was tensed and nervous, which affected Michael. We argued more frequently than before. The attempt to find another man failed, not for lack of opportunity. I went alone to the Atravete, standing around, just looking, but refused all invitations to dance, as well as invitations for a drink. More frustrated and sad than before, I returned an hour later back home. There was no one who could stand the comparison to Jeff. To make matters abundantly worse, something I would have the least expected happened when Jose told me he had no money to pay my salary. This is not serious, right? I have a son to feed and to pay rent. I also have plenty of gas money advanced this month for the outdoor sales force. And now you want to tell me I've worked the whole month for free? Depressed, he nodded his head. Without a word, and with tears in my eyes, I returned to my office, packed my things, said goodbye to Juan, whom I learned to appreciate much as a colleague, telling him I'm leaving. Unfortunately, I can't afford to sit around here without payment. I have to look for a new job. Directly I headed to John's locutorio. He was still too embarrassed to look me in the eye. I wrote in capital letters I was looking for work, added my qualifications and my phone number on the note, printed and copied it 30 times to distribute them throughout Torremolinos. Michael wondered why I was already home early. I explained to him what had happened. Worried, he asked, "Does this shit of job search start now all over again?" But before I could answer, my cell phone rang. A man asked me whether I had bar experience. He had recently opened a disco and needed bar staff. After I set Michael shortly in the picture, I was sitting in the car and drove toward the center of Torremolinos. The disco was not necessarily the sky. Besides, it was empty. Okay, it was new opened and needed time. The owner, a Moroccan, liked me right away and wanted me to stay. We agreed. I worked all open evenings from Tuesday to Sunday. He offered me €20 per night. It wasn't even 500 monthly, not even my rent. So I made up my mind to find a second job until I found another full-time job. At least I had time during the day to search. The first few evenings were very boring. Musat already opened at 9 o'clock, but no one came in because it was too hot. However, I was back full of ideas how we could fill the club, and Musat, who was inexperienced in this industry, took my advice gratefully. To my counsel, he hired some pretty girls who did the advertising for the club by distributing flyers. Now, predominantly, tourists started to visit the disco, who received the first drink for free, cheap brandy or liquor, but the people rejoiced. I made the DJ play different music. Musat had no idea of music. The club began to fill by itself. But when it was real packed and he smelled profit, Musat jumped nervously around behind the counter to drive me almost to madness, because he only stood in the way. "Either you let me do my work here, or you can serve yourself," I hissed at him. If this didn't help, I actually left him alone with the bar, entertained the guests, or danced until others were animated to dance too. With the guests, especially the men, I got along great and had some nights up to €50 tip, which saved me, of course. I let them invite me for drinks, which Musat watched with joy as this heightened profit. Many English and German-speaking guests were glad to have someone of their language with whom they could talk. Musat was very pleased with me. It only bugged me that he just wouldn't stop being after me. But Musat dredged every female, so I took it not too seriously. Was annoyed, though, about the fact that half of the female population in Torremolinos had free drinks on the house. Would have never done this. We lost a lot of revenue this way. More than once I warned Musat, business is business. The second weekend after I began work at the disco, I found a second job in a cafe just before Marbella. The boss, a German lady, managed the store very successfully, but rock hard. Far and wide was this the only bakery and confectionery offering German cakes, pies, breads, in addition, hot meals. I brought great joy to Michael this Saturday when I came home with poppy seed rolls he loved for his life, but were to buy nowhere else in Malaga. In addition, he crushed on the apple and strawberry pie. I felt like drawn through a treadmill because I went directly from the disco to the bakery, where from 7 o'clock in the morning hell was breaking loose after we hoisted the heavy tables and chairs on the sun terrace. By 10 o'clock, the waitresses were running each other over the piles, and I ran among them. Customers were not served here, they were handled as on the assembly line. Some were even addressed stupid. True to the motto, if you don't like it here, then go somewhere else. They could afford it, because with this assortment they offered, the customers would have come back even if they would have been kicked out the door. My working hours were limited to Saturday and Sunday, earning per day €100. This meant with the money I earned in the disco, it was almost more than I had earned with Jose, not including the tips. Even if it was exhausting, I did it for Michael, and we were able initially to make a living. Unfortunately, my calculation didn't quite work out, because on Sunday the boss told me she couldn't probably work with me. I was too friendly to the guests. There simply was no time for this. In other words, I was too slow. She didn't know I was sleeping during the weekends, only 2 hours. I could not be as fit as the others. However, they paid me €250, and we had enough bread and cakes for the rest of the week. During the day, I carried on with my search for work. Only a few hours I slept. Got up with, prepared his breakfast, took him to school, and went to the daily search. If my way brought me to Marbella, I met with Doris for dinner or a coffee. Meanwhile, she worked there as a housemaid for a stinking rich German family. Actually, her present situation was even worse than my own, because the family insisted she stayed overnight in a small room and was virtually 24 hours on disposition. Inevitably, she left her son 5 days in the apartment in Rincon de la Victoria alone and unattended. We agreed our life here in Spain was not easy, but give up we would not. We encouraged each other. However, it was not hidden from me how much she suffered from the harassment of this family she worked for. Could I set it up? I was at home for preparing lunch for Michael. He still didn't like the school lunches. I was seriously worried how we could continue. I still possessed reserves, but how long for? Many times I spoke with Michael, and he understood how serious our situation was. For his part, he had already a clear idea what he wanted to do for a living: a painter and decorator, a profession executed here in Spain with great success. In particular, Michael would have a good chance to find German, English, and Spanish clients. I was very happy about these clear ideas and supported it. On my next trip to Marbella, I asked in a company for painting and decoration if my son could make a practical training during the holidays. Unfortunately, this was rejected because this was not accepted by the security. Only with 18 years of age he was allowed to do it. I consoled him. You just finish your school first, and then you learn the profession. But I'm convinced it is a good choice. You can build a large customer base, and for this I wanted to continue fighting. At times it was quite funny in the disco, especially with the tourists. Like the night when 2 German women were our guests, mother and daughter. Both were already filled up all right, and Mussat, as usual, hot on the daughter, flirting and dancing with her while I was talking with the mother. Is here not a Spanish disco in the vicinity? Something like this we also have at home, she asked me. I offered to take her to the Atravite, if they wanted to wait for me until I finished work. Mussat was pissed off when I took the 2 with me, and the flirting, including free drinks, were in vain. But then he decided to follow us later. Once again, it was full in the Atravite. The people were celebrating. Mother and daughter were excited. They spent me vodka with orange. I hate vodka, but I was high-spirited this night to drink this terrible stuff, and let me carried away by a gang of Spanish men. In the midst of them I met Javier, who resembled David Bisbal with his shoulder-length curls. I immediately had a kick on Javier. When he asked me to dance, I joked, "Are you David Bisbal?" He replied, "Sí, y tú es mi quenoa," then the girlfriend of David Bisbal. Of course, he was aware about his attractiveness, and he was accordingly arrogant. but didn't bother me at all. I danced alternately with him and his friends to salsa, reggaeton, merengue, and of course to the music of David Bisbal. Finally I paused, sat down at the table where this German mother sat. Javier gave me in macho manner a sign I should come over to him. This, however, I certainly did not. "If you want something from me, then you come over here, David Bisbal," I shouted over to him. Thus he laughingly sat himself next to me. Secretly, I already figured I would spend the night with Javier. Of all, this German daughter spoiled my tour thoroughly. She had first been together with Musat in the dance club of the lower floor, letting poor Musat pay a fortune of drinks for her to send him to desert afterwards, and then came to us, threw herself directly onto Javier's neck. I was pissed. This became worse when she pretended she was feeling bad and had to go outside for fresh air. Javier, very gentleman, accompanied her. My mood was in the basement, and I just wanted to go home. The first time I was really interested in another man since Jeff, and now this. I couldn't go home because I had, unfortunately, promised these two to drop them off at their hotel. So I had to wait until this cow came back. I jostled, but the mother said, "Let us wait." I replied quite rudely, "Why? Your daughter is still in front of the door, and I really must sleep now." We fought our way through the masses of people when Javier was coming towards us with his woman in tow from the other end. Apparently affected, Javier asked me why I wanted to leave. "Because I'm tired," I gave back shortly. "Are you going to be here next week?" he asked. "I don't think so," I replied coolly. Furious, I was on my way with these two drunk women, dropped them off in front of the hotel and went home. Michael was in El Palo. I was alone and cried with rage. My anger subsided, however, and I told myself nothing had happened between the two. Maybe Javier truly didn't want to leave her alone out of courtesy. Yes, I wanted to see Javier again. I wouldn't allow myself to be discouraged about it, even when Musat gave me notice the following week. The club was simply running too bad. He could not pay me. The rest of the week I rattled off again all possibilities and opportunities to work, until I came to the conclusion to put something myself on its feet again. I would not find work here, at least not a job that would survive me and Michael. Saturday I went in anticipation to the Atravete to see Javier again. This time I vowed I would not allow another woman coming into the enclosure. I waited and waited, and finally was disappointed. Javier did not come, but Luciano came into my life.